I have with me Nicholas Smith, Minister for the Environment and the Minister for Climate Change Issues in the New Zealand National Government, and advocate, at least today, for an emissions trading scheme. Welcome, Nicholas. I'm flattered. You said in 2005, the madness of the government's new carbon tax is that New Zealanders will be the only people in the world paying it. It will drive up the costs of living and undermine the competitiveness of New Zealand business for negligible environmental gain. And in the Nelson and Marlborough, economies are struggling. The last thing we need is another $25 million being sucked out with this new tax. If you would like to assist the Axe Carbon Tax petition and campaign, contact my office. We need to bury this lemon. The government you of course referred to was the Labour government, and you were in opposition. You say whatever's needed in opposition. All the leaders of the West want an emission trading scheme. So much for leaders of the West. And the national government wanted to set an example to the rest of the world. We rushed the emission trading law through, so New Zealanders would be the only people in the world paying it, to drive up the cost of living and undermine the competitiveness of New Zealand business. For what? So we would be world leaders. And now the rest of the world is bailing out. Aussies last week. It's your lemon now. How do you sleep at night being so inconsistent? I toss and turn if I have a comma out of place. You get used to it. So you lied. Lied? Of course not. You say one thing to con people into believing and voting for you, and once you've sucked them in, do precisely the opposite. Isn't that lying? We're not doing precisely the opposite. Labour's emission trading scheme was going to hit 10 times as hard as ours is. So Labour would have killed the nation fast, but you kill us softly. Renton, we must save the planet. Sounds messianic. Save it from what? Sin? Exactly. The mortal, unforgivable sin of causing global warming, with hellfire and damnation for emitters. How does an emission trading scheme save the planet? By taxing emissions. And how does taxing emissions save the planet? By making all emitters pay for the emissions they emit. Pay who for what emissions they emit? Well, look, it's all rather convoluted because emissions are very gaseous, elusive. So who's paying for these elusive emissions? All of us. At the point of a gun, it's a case of following the money, which I'm trying to do. Some will have debits and some will have credits, and they'll trade and save the planet. We've measured how much gas cows and sheep emit. And if you own a cow or a sheep, most people who own cows or sheep own lots of them. So lots of gas, so lots of tax. You'll be required to pay for the carbon debits, the farting they do, the gas they emit. So this is a fart trading scheme. Emission trading scheme, please. Children could be watching. You concerned about children? Having schools ram propaganda down their throats, giving them nightmares with all your doom and gloom, stealing the joy of living and hope for a future. All these animals emit greenhouse gases. We must be realistic. Farming meat and dairy is not compatible with environmental stewardship. We must all become vegetarians. Stop sheep and beef and dairy farming. They're primary industries. Can't do that at the moment. But we can provide disincentives and all start riding bicycles. To Australia. What about carbon credits for the grass farmers grow? No credits for grass, only for forests. Manna from heaven for forestry. So let's get this clear. Greenhouse gases are a problem. Renton, greenhouse gases are the problem. Carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. If they increase in the atmosphere, the Earth will burn. Who says? Michael Mann. And a consensus of scientists. Michael Mann, who's as crooked as a hockey stick. And his fellow crooks of ClimateGate fame. Consensus? Since when has science been democratic? But if you're talking numbers, 31,000 scientists have signed a petition saying greenhouse gases are not a problem. Just a curious little cultural artifact, like alien abductions. The scientific community mostly agrees on climate issues. The science is in. Clearly not. 31,000 dissenters is a lot of scientists, and the science is in that greenhouse gases do not cause global warming, but has followed global warming when it's occurred. You've got the cart before the horse. Horses have to go. It's back to rickshaws. I thought it was bikes, cycles, of hot and cold. What's the big deal if the world got warmer anyway? Which isn't happening. It's been cooling for a decade. Hey, you must have noticed the delicious irony that Copenhagen got hit by a snowball during the global warming conference. I was there. That's weather, not climate. Looked as though it was planned by a cosmic comic. Good shot. Bullseye. Warmer's better, isn't it? Most people prefer summer to winter, except snowboarders. Vikings could farm Greenland again. Renton, global warming will mean the end of the world. The Arctic will melt, the oceans will rise, and polar bears go extinct. Unless we do something, we're doomed. We must save the world. Yeah, I know. You said that before with religious devotion and fervour and sweat on your brow. Only the Arctic's not melting, oceans are not rising, and polar bears are not going extinct. You plan to flog $2,000 to $3,000 from every New Zealand household in a King Canute attempt to change the climate. Only you believe it, whereas Canute was pointing out the folly of such presumption. How much warmer? 2 degrees. 2 degrees? You made it sound like the oceans would boil dry. Save your cents and the dollars will look after themselves. Dollars all right, but not yours, and in vast numbers. Nicholas, climate skeptics aren't out to take anything from anyone, not a brass razoo. Nor make a grab for power in a contrived crisis like you guys. You can't let a good crisis go wanting, even if it is manufactured. A few years back, the experts said the world was cooling. Woe was us. We were heading into an ice block. Those experts were wrong. The world was getting warmer. Who says? Today's experts. Why should we believe them any more than the other crowd? Because they're experts. What's their evidence? They've published a report for the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. Very impressive. Since when has a report been evidence? The evidence is in the report. And is that the world's getting warmer. No kidding. Look, wind measurements from the upper atmosphere suggest there's a hot spot precisely where one should be if greenhouse gases are making the world warmer. I thought thermometers were used to measure temperatures, not anemometers. What do thermometers up there show? No change. So you measure wind speed instead? Nice call. What do ground-based thermometers show? A definite warming trend. Where are the thermometers? All around the world. Precisely. Airports, parking lots, city weather stations. Seen that photo of an aircon unit blowing hot air onto a weather station? Any stations in Siberia? No readings used from Siberia. Do you think temperature readings could be skewed through taking them from hot places and not from cold places like Siberia? Siberia is a large chunk of the planet. Not at all. I see. CO2's a plant food, isn't it? Plants breathe in CO2 and breathe out oxygen. And some greenhouse growers pump CO2 into their greenhouses to make their plants grow better. So I believe. Couldn't more CO2 in the atmosphere make all the plants in the world grow better? We could grow more food. Or at least plants for ethanol and let the peasants starve. And even granting the dubious connection between CO2 and global warming, couldn't increased uptake of CO2 by plants actually be a feedback mechanism keeping CO2 constant around a mean? Don't baffle me with science. The world's warming due to anthropogenic carbon emissions. End of story. The IPCC says so. Anyway, the law's in place and a huge amount of effort has been expended in CO2 emitters, setting up the trading scheme, and we don't want to waste all that money and effort. It's already wasted. If CO2 is not a problem and the world's not warming, then millions worldwide have been poured down the drain. Billions which could have been spent on a host of productive activities. Just provided lots of people with productive activities. Like the prostitutes in Copenhagen and in the global warming research centres. The UN's at the centre of this, isn't it? Quite right. And our beloved immediate past leaders sitting there telling you guys what to do. Beloved? She's a flaming socialist and you're national, and Nats aren't supposed to say socialist to beloved. As former Minister of Finance Michael Cullen said, we're all socialists now. You may be, but if they'd known, I don't think many people would have voted National Socialist last election. So, we must save the planet through cutting CO2 emissions? Partly. Look, even if we shut New Zealand down, we wouldn't be able to measure any difference in temperature. So instead, the UN decided to collect a levy on emissions and give them to developing nations, Robin Hood, so they can develop and become rich and increase their emissions. Brilliant. Where does saving the planet come into it? The world is fragmented into different nations, ideologies and religions, so we need a world government that can save the planet. So saving the planet's about politics, not the environment. And population. Population. There are far too many people, and every one of them breathes out carbon dioxide. Exactly. So we can kill two birds with one stone, reduce CO2 and reduce the world's population by requiring 3/4 of the world's population to stop breathing. And you're going to lead by example? Saviours of the world are exempt.